Hello, welcome to The Play That Changed My Life, the podcast which is an enormous boondoggle just to get more theater in my life. I'm Patrick White. I am co-founder of Harbinger Theater, bringing you the podcast, along with OSM Studios. And in the studio today, we have a Shakespeareance. We have two Shakespeare companies, two members of two Shakespeare companies, and we're going to find out about Shakespeare in August. Joining me today is Frank Segro.
Got it.
Oh, yeah. And Zach Gibson from Columbia County Players. They have a production of Twelfth Night coming up. And over here is Kristoph DiMaria and Ash Visker from the celebrated Will Kemp's Players. Hello, guys.
Hey.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah.
Yes, celebrated. Yeah, you guys, will there be cake? There should be cake. Did anyone bring cake? I don't have any cake.
There's cake at the end of Midsummer.
Oh, excellent.
Real.
Midsummer
Yeah.
Madness.
You get
We have
cake
to
at the
talk
end.
about that. Excellent. I'll go anywhere there's cake. All right, let's get down to it.
We have the raw ingredients for the cakes. We're right ahead of you there.
So I saw in the Times over the weekend that there was a story related to Shakespeare, actually, very much so. There's a guy, Roy Cockrum, from Louisville, Kentucky, and he won $250 million in 2012, I think. And he set up a foundation that is devoted to funding theater, and he came about this because he saw a production in London, and he thought, wow, how did they get all the resources to do something like that? And he wanted to bring that over to America, and so personally, he's funding productions, and he challenges companies to come up with difficult and prohibitive productions, and the one that the Times focused on was a Henry VI, which is in 3 parts that Shakespeare wrote, that is being done out at the Old Globe, and they especially wanted to do it because it's the one Shakespeare that they hadn't done yet. So, what do you think of that? Do you look at
Roy, if you're listening, Will Kemp's Players is based out of Troy, New York. Columbia County Players are down in the Mid-Hudson Valley.
Columbia County.
Right, exactly. And $250 million for a small theater company here in upstate New York goes a long way.
Yes.
You won't
Yes.
even ask for the full. Just give us I don't know, 10 million. That works.
10 million. 10
10
million.
grand is great.
That's
Hey,
very
great for us
very
right there.
modest. So you two, both companies rely on outside help financially, right?
Yeah.
Where does the money come from?
A lot of our money actually comes from audience donations. At the end of every show, we perform a jig. We go out into the audience. We let people know that if they want to see more of it, there's one way to help us out to keep creating more of it. We also have some grants. I know you can speak a little bit more on that if you'd like.
Sure. As the director of development for the company, we cobbled together grants from a variety of different organizations, including the Alliance of Resident Theaters in New York, which specifically supports New York City and northwards, and they're a wonderful organization. The Arts Center of the Capital Region in Troy, which is a decentralization agent for NISCA funding, also supports us, as well as the Friends of Prospect Park, which is a specific park in Troy, New York, that Frederick Law Olmsted, designer of Central Park in New York City, had a hand in designing. Beautiful historic park. There is a concrete swimming pool in there from 1917, I believe, and it's actually going through a little bit of a renaissance and revitalization with the city of Troy right now. They have an organization that helps us bring free outdoor Shakespeare in the park to the neighborhood.
Excellent. And all of these organizations, as we were discussing before, because Will Kemp's Players is a nonprofit organization, you have 501c3 status.
So, interestingly enough, we do not have
I
501c3
didn't.
status. We are actually a New York State cooperative. So we are actually a worker or member-owned cooperative that operates in the spirit of a nonprofit. So essentially, we do file a 990. Essentially, we do have all of the trappings of a nonprofit, but we don't have the tax-deductible designation specifically through our organization. It's actually through our partnership with Fractured Atlas, which, if there's any theater listeners on here, you probably know about.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now you know.
Columbia County Players has a benefactor. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
That's pretty much it. Very technical answer over there.
Yes.
We are pretty much solely funded by one very generous individual, as well as the foundation that runs the dairy, where we're operating right now.
Right.
However, we are in pursuit of our 501c3. In the next 17 days, I'll have that done, definitely.
Yeah.
And we're going to look to diversify where that comes from. But one of our big goals is continuing to do free productions, because a big goal of ours is accessibility to folks, specifically in Hudson, the Hudson
Right.
community and Columbia County at large. So that's the goal. Keep
Sure.
rich folks happy. I think we can do it.
Excellent. Columbia County Players, you guys did Midsummer Night's Dream. And what's the name of the barn that you're in?
Well, I think Carol Rusoff, who's our main director and the person that kind of started this venture, she calls it the Globe, basically. We call it the Churchtown Dairy Globe. Because when you walk into the space, it's this beautiful barn that was created by, what's Rick's last name? Anderson?
Anderson, yeah.
Rick Anderson is the designer of the dairy barn. It's a beautiful, beautiful space that when she walked in a couple years back, she's like, we need to do Shake. It reminded her of the Globe in London. So
It's a circular building with a second floor, a balcony that looks down onto the stage.
And we had the stage built last year by Rick. And it just was such a huge success that we're able to come back this year and perform 12th night. And hopefully, years down the line, we're going to keep staying there because it seems like a beautiful place.
Like adding more stuff to get rid of the cows. Music platform.
Yeah.
Stairs down the front.
Yeah, we're
Getting
really
more elaborate every year.
And you were there last year, so we're utilizing the moat more. I think our person who played Puck, Lin Yi, utilized the moat a little bit, but this year we're really trying to organize to make it more accessible with audiences, because I trained over at Shakes & Co. So with that is like the audience participation in Shakespeare, like that's Shakespeare to me. It's not this idea of proscenium theaters where there's a fourth wall. It's basically, it's you and the audience, you connect with them. And that's what I teach a lot of the newer actors that we work with, because we have what I called seasoned professionals and people that are just have never touched the stage
first
before.
time on stage.
Yeah, which is really something really for me as somebody that wants to get into education. Being able to like see the spark in their eyes light up when it's like, no, this monologue, Viola, you're talking to the audience. Talk to me right now. And then you just see it click in her head. And it's, for me, it's so satisfying just to watch that and watch that exploration from those people. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
I saw some interactions going on over here, and you guys were lighting up. Yes.
We got excited.
Yeah.
Audience interaction is a huge thing at Kemp's, and I think we both believe is a huge part of Shakespeare, and something I think accessibility for Shakespeare is really, really important. Bringing more people in to see it. I think Shakespeare can be really daunting for people. I think a lot of people are introduced to Shakespeare in a classroom environment when they're younger. It's graded. Your ability to understand it from a book and some video clips is graded. It can be stressful to reintroduce yourself as something fun to interact with, to join in on. Something that it strikes me a lot with Shakespeare is how the relationship with the audience is so much of the show. And that's true of all theater. But I liked specifically that you mentioned Viola and her interaction, the asides that Shakespeare characters give. When I've given asides, I'm taking that reaction from the audience. They are informing my character, not just me as an actor, but they're part of that show. They kind of fill in almost as this chorus, as this piece of the show to feed off of and to feed back. And I think I don't know, I just got very excited hearing some of what you guys were talking about because it resonated with what we do.
Excellent. Free Shakespeare, going back, I mean, obviously it took place before Joseph Papp in New York City, but I mean, he really I don't know, popularized it or introduced it to American audiences, or he's been running with it or he has passed away, but the Public Theater in New York has been running with it for 60 years now, and perhaps that's part of it, that the audience interaction. In Free Shakespeare is what keeps it going, do you think?
There's a certain unexpectedness with interaction, I find, and there's different audience members with different comfortability levels, and there's a lot of different theorists who've come up with all these different ways to see how willing an audience member is or what they're interested in. And what I find fun, that I'm not sure if it answers your question, but it's fun to see the spark in the audience members' eyes when they realize, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go dance like on stage, or oh my gosh, like I can speak back, or they're asking me a question, how do I respond with my face? I find it does help keep it alive in an unexpected way. I don't think if I pitch to a lot of my family members, come to a really interactive play, that all of them would be really excited about that. But Shakespeare has like a beauty of having so many different levels of interaction that you could be an audience member who kind of keeps to yourself and enjoys the story in front of you, or you can be an audience member who maybe sings along with a song, who's really invested in a character and giving your feedback to that actor silently. There's debate over shout-outs. Some companies really love it, some really don't. But I've been in a lot of productions where an audience member has even gotten vocal or joined in on some of our singing and dancing.
I mean, in fact, we've built that convention in the Globe Theatre as well as in the Blackfriars Theatre in London. There would have been gallant stools on either side of the stage where audience members would be invited to sit essentially at the border of the wings. And you would have the opportunity to be pulled on stage if there were soldiers needed for a marching scene. If there are friends, Roman and countrymen that Mark Antony wants, boy, he's going to get them right there from those gallant stools. And I think the ideology of Free Shakespeare in the Park brings the idea that this is a consensual, low-risk environment in which audience members have not paid for their time there before they get to the show, which means maybe they don't feel entitled to take something from it, or that there's a certain level of respect that they have to give, that we're all trained in American audiences from a very young age to sit and be silent. Like you mentioned, the proscenium theater. From a very early age, we're supposed to let it wash over us and have some kind of experience. With Shakespeare and it being free, I think you open up the possibility for people to take more risks with how they spend their time there.
I would agree wholeheartedly.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you guys talked about free in increasing the accessibility of, is it just Shakespeare? Is it theater in the Hudson area? I mean, up here we have many theater choices in the capital region. There are dozens of companies, and sometimes a weekend will come up and there's 10, 12 productions going on. Is it the same in Hudson, or is it an active?
Yeah, there's a lot going on in Hudson.
Great.
Say. However, there's a lot of barriers to entry for folks, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that create anxiety, to your point.
Right.
And so one of, I think, our goals is how do you reduce anxiety for people in terms of coming to a thing. I'm a Shakespeare skeptic still a little bit.
Yeah?
I'm happy to talk more about it without being killed by this group of people.
Yeah, no.
No one's looking to play Brutus here. You're safe. Yeah.
And so my relationship is probably different than everyone else's, but to me, it's like shared experiences with folks are what is important, and as we all know, like that is diminishing in society. And so how do we add those experiences? And the easiest way to do that is by making it free, because it reduces risk and anxiety and barriers.
To that end, and you definitely know this coming from Shakespeare and Company as well, who's a lovely friend of ours, you need to give the audience permission to have that interaction, to have fun, to know that they can laugh, to know that they can shout out, to know that if you make eye contact with them and want to pull them out, they can choose to do that. And I think, Shakespeare lends itself to that because of the way it's written.
I find, I'm like kind of blinking. I find that there's, I'm going to leave that thought. It's not
Okay.
formed.
Yeah. Frank, you're a Shakespeare skeptic. No. So let's talk about how you came to Columbia County Players. And are you, were you recruited, or is it, yeah?
Yeah. I've known Zach since we were 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And we reconnected, I think, like mid-pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
Just about,
Yeah.
like, maybe the world was ending, so it was like, hey, let's reach back out. And I had spent most of my career in the music business, working at Bethel Woods Center for the Arts for 15 years. Then I started a Renaissance Fair, which was actually, I think, my first Shakespeare entry point.
Yep.
And part of what we were trying to do amongst a bevy of other equity, but not the way you're thinking about it, equity
Sure.
things, was how do we make this something that people can come and enjoy, get a little of the Shakespeare flair, but like feel comfortable. So we're like, oh, well, we'll have breakdancers, and we'll have, what was the song that we did? Like, we'll use the music from Footloose, and we'll also have
Tom Jones. You use Tom Jones too.
Yeah.
like.
Nice.
How do we bring
Breakdancing.
some of that stuff in where people are sort of getting the feel of Shakespeare, and like here is the entry point for
Yeah.
someone to feel comfortable in a kind of a very interactive environment, right?
Yeah.
Where you're passing the hat, you're doing all the same stuff. And that was like a little bit of like, oh, maybe I could be into this because I'm like too stupid to go watch actual Shakespeare. And then I went and saw Midsummer. I sat on the floor, which was an absolute nightmare for my back.
Yeah.
As a tall individual. And, I thought it was really great. And it was my first time, I think, absorbing it in a way where I felt like sponge-like and comfortable. And then Zach was like, oh, the producer last year left. And like, do you want to do this? I was like, sure. And so here we are.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Frank, I've known him since we were little kids. His mom was like my second mom. We did theater in high school and elementary school and middle school. We don't talk about that.
Damn Yankees. What was the
Neil Simon.
What was the high school musical?
Oh,
Guys
we
and
did.
Dolls.
Yeah.
No, there
Those
was
sound
Manny?
Reese.
Oh.
fun.
Sound of Music.
It's just standards.
Yeah, the standards. Well, you guys
The
did Music
American
Man that one year. I
classics.
didn't do it. Yeah. But yeah, Carol was like, she reached out to me in I think December. Wanted me specifically to play Malvolio, and she's like, I want you to play Malvolio, but do you know anyone that wants to assistant direct? Do you know a producer? And I was like, well, Carol, I love directing, so I can try to do both, but I'd rather be directing. Again, I'm still doing both right now, which is a challenge, but I think it's a good challenge that's testing me about how to do multiple things. And then she kind of gave me a rundown of what the producer does. And I was like, sounds like Frank's job. Frank, would you want to do this? And he's like, yeah, sure. This looks like stuff I love doing. I was like, here you go, sign up. And he met with Carol, and that was it. And he's now, I appreciate his help so much on this project. Like, it's nice having him there in the room, even though he says he's a Shakespeare critic, like his outside skeptic critic. His outside viewpoints when we're in a rehearsal space doing a run, and he's like, oh, that kind of looks weird. This kind of looks funny. I'm like, because me and Carol are seeing, that's the challenging of being now co-directors. It's like I have a vision for the show and she also has a vision. So now it's us blending those two visions together and helping each other raise the show to where we want it both to be. And to have his input of being like, yeah, it looks kind of off. And then we go back and look back. And, oh, you're right. It does kind of look off. Let's edit it. It's almost like having an audience there already. Being like, oh, that doesn't work for me. We have to. There's something with the Viola Sir Andrew fight or the Cesario Sir Andrew fight that we had to fix, and then we made it a way of getting rid of certain sort, and it just worked out. It flows so much nicer now. So yeah, he's invaluable to this company. And
Well,
I
that
hope
sounds
he
great.
understands.
I'll revise skeptic to maybe a lesser word.
Novice.
Curious.
Shakespeareance.
That's great. Congratulations. That sounds like a great partnership.
Yeah.
To have both sides. To have someone who's not as experienced as well as you and Carol, who are steeped in the story. It's great to have that other perspective as well. So you studied at Shakespearean Company, so you obviously have performance background. How did you get into theater?
So I mean, we did it in elementary school, high school, and And then I kind of, when I left high school, I was like, oh, I want to act. That's what I want to do. Where most people are like, no, get a business degree and be this. Like, no, I want to act. And my parents were very generous and it was like, as long as you're happy, that's all that matters. And I was like, cool. So I went to community college, did that for a little bit. Did not hit the actual classes I should be focusing on. So I got kicked out of the cherry orchard 2 weeks before we opened. And that left, I was a little dealing with stuff personally and I kind of just left the school. Then I went and I followed the Warped Tour with a band and I did some tours with musicians. I was in a couple bands. And when I was like 21, 22, I was like I was living in Newburgh at the time and I just had this thought of like, I want to do theater again. I miss it. I miss doing it. So I signed up for SUNY Ulster, did their acting classes and theater classes there and then went straight to New Paltz. So I graduated New Paltz in 2019. Then COVID hit, which I know people I know COVID was drastic for a lot of people. It was terrible for a lot of people, especially the theater business. A part of me did feel honestly so relieved that I didn't have to go and hustle down at these auditions in the city. I could finally, there was time to breathe, It's like, right. Oh, you can sit back and like kind of restock your life. Where I was going to work still, I'm a produce manager at a small health food store, so I was dealing every day. I was going in dealing with masks, bagging up the bulk section, all this hectic stuff in this wild time. And during COVID, I was focusing on music. I wrote an electronic dance jazz vibey album, not released. I just kind of did it for myself. And then I started watching RSC productions on, I think it was either digitaltheater.com or there was a Broadway one, I think, that had RSCs for a while. And after watching those productions, especially watched this Hamlet production with, I forget the actor's name. It was phenomenal. And after watching it, I was like, okay, I can see why this play is this play.
Yeah.
And for when I said after COVID's done, if I go back into theater, I want to do Shakespeare specifically. That's what I want to do because I can see how it connects to audiences. I see how the stories and everything, it's so prime and real for what we're dealing with now that I saw Shakes & Co. had their winter intensive right after kind of COVID kind of cleared up. They were like, this is our first one since before COVID. I was like, let's do it. I jumped in and now we're here.
I love COVID-inspired stories. they're my. I get so excited about them because I was writing a reference for someone this morning, and she started taking my acting class, which I kicked back into gear in September of 2020, and I was writing it and thinking about, she was a stranger coming into that room, and it was like a socially distanced acting class at the Albany Barn, and I was thinking, boy, that takes something, and when I was writing this, I was like, boy, it feels like a long time ago, and what COVID has done as far as how we look at what we want to do in our lives and how that's affected, what we're going forward and what we have time for and what we, push aside and what we want to spend our time doing. I think it's great. Congratulations. Kristoph, I don't think I know this story. I know Kristoph studied with my partner many years ago, yes?
Many years ago, Chris Foster at Schenectady County Community College. Our stories are kind of similar.
Community colleges, they're great.
They are great.
They're great.
How'd you get into theater?
Like these two, I first discovered theater in grade school, right? I was Robin Hood and Robin Hood the Musical in 6th grade.
Brag.
Had a high soprano before my voice dropped.
Oh!
My mother probably has
Robin
that
Hood's
VHS
soprano.
somewhere queued up, ready to go to embarrass me to loved ones. But from there, it built a confidence that led me to discover other musicals, Guys and Dolls. We did an Alice in Wonderland, Pirates of Penzance, and then through high school, Romeo and Juliet, West Side Story, a lot of American classics, right? So that led me to want to either go into acting or go into music when it came time to graduate high school. And I actually chose music. I enrolled as a vocal performance arts major in Schenectady County Community College in the music department. But I met a guest of your show as well, Sandra Boynton. who at that time was the department chair of SCCC Theater. And she opened my eyes with what was a one-act play festival that she called Poland, because basically her philosophy was, I can put Poland on a sign, I can drop it on the stage, and that's where we are. It included the play Botticelli. It included Terrence McNally's Witness. It included Medea. It was such an eclectic survey of theater history that I had no idea existed, right? My first experience with theater was like, yeah, Shakespeare's out there, and then there's American Broadway musicals. And that opened me up to a lot of exploration. She taught us what she calls original practices Shakespeare, which is also what Shakes & Co. talks about. I'm sure this is probably a lot of what Columbia County Players involves as well in your process, yes?
Yeah, it's what I'm definitely... I think me and Carol, she has her history with Shakespeare, and if she was here today, she could explain it. But yeah, no, I try to mirror what I learned at Shakes & Co. because I think the way they process and work with students, especially their education department with Kevin Coleman, like, that clicked with me. I was like, no, this resonates with me. And so that I try to, as much as I can bring over, I try to give that to the newer people to Shakespeare of the original practices and stuff like that.
And I think that really allows us, again, we were talking about how to develop a non-aversion to risk, how to be able to interact with an audience, how to be able to express yourself using Shakespeare. Original practices, the way that Sandra defines it, is Shakespeare in a way that we think Shakespeare might recognize, which really strips away a lot of the spectacle. I mean, our company dramaturg here, Ash, could talk about it a long time. I'll simplify it by just saying that some of the principles Sandy talked about were universal lighting, the idea that the stage is essentially in a wash so that we can see the audience and the audience can see us. It's bare. You can have lighting effects. That's not to say that there's no changes that help support the storytelling, but it's already in the text. If Shakespeare wants you to believe it's night, he tells you so. If Shakespeare wants you to do something, there's an embedded stage direction that helps define who calls an exit, what movement you're doing, what the hierarchy of class of people in the room is. And so for us, we try to follow those rules as much as possible to avoid the trap of what we would consider proscenium art theater. Suffice to say, I graduated Schenectady County Community College in '07 and just had about a 15-year stint of working in fine dining, as a lot of people in theater could probably attest to, and then a number of odd jobs. And I've arrived as the co-founder of this organization since 2017, and an arts administrator, as well as an educator. So I work with med students at Albany Medical College doing empathy and communication training as a standardized patient with you.
Yes.
And many other creative folks in the capital region. I also teach at a variety of community centers, including Oakwood, Castle Island Bilingual Montessori School, and a host of others.
Ash, yes.
Yeah. So I played lacrosse for all of my childhood, and then I had a friend who convinced me to audition for a Shakespeare club that was completely student run. The students directed it, the students picked the play, and I thought it would be fun, so I auditioned. And then I was cast as Rosalind, and I had to call my dad. I remember it vividly. I was in like the Guildland High School hallway crying, being like, I'm going to quit lacrosse because I would like to be in a play. It was very High School Musical of me. It was very... so that's how I got into theater.
Did you think your father would disapprove?
I was anxious about it, and he was so supportive. Like, I had convinced myself, like, changing, like, I had all these plans. I was going to look at UAlbany. I was going to play lacrosse. I was going to be an athlete. And I just started high school, and then I decided I'm not going to be an athlete. I'm going to read heightened language on a stage and dance and sing. And I just hadn't done so much of that. And at the time, it just felt like such a radical change. And I was so afraid that, you know, my family would be mad because they spent all this money, all this time getting me trained for lacrosse, getting me that equipment. My dad was a lacrosse coach for one of the community leagues, very High School Musical. But ultimately, my parents have been nothing but supportive of my artistic career. A few years later, I went to SUNY Purchase. I did some amazing projects there, worked with some really cool people. In 2019, I was lucky enough to, it was again, just somebody, I had been kind of overwhelmed, once again sobbing. I'm crying on my couch. I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing theater. I'm so stressed out. And my friend Adam, who actually trained me to be a lighting designer, he sat down next to me and he was like, why did you do theater? what's the best theater you've ever been in? And I was like, Shakespeare, and I'm crying. And he's like, okay. And he's Googling as fast as he can, and he found this like little academy in Connecticut. And so I went there, and I kind of relearned how to love theater through Shakespeare again, and had an amazing, amazing time. We did The Winter's Tale, and I played Leontes, and I got the life lesson that the villainous character doesn't think they're a villain. And I remember at the time being like what? I came in like so ready to be like the evilest tyrant ever. I was so ready to just like do my Machiavellian mustache twirl. And the director sat down with me and was like, this is a play about forgiveness. This is a play about accountability, and kind of having to find that for the first time. And then COVID happened, and I kind of switched into design that year, the first year of COVID. I did mostly like electrical work and lighting design. Some of the restrictions in place gave way to some of the most interesting designs I've ever seen. We did a lot of shadow work to accommodate for having to be 6 feet apart with all of the actors, so we could have the actors have moments of intimacy or moments of conflict where usually we would have a fight or we would have an embrace. Instead, we had to find a way to use lighting to kind of make their shadows consume each other or make their shadows interact with each other. So that kind of influenced my design background pretty heavily. And then recently I studied with the Prague Shakespeare Company, one of their winter intensives, and I worked with some amazing people there as well. I got the opportunity to play Viola, and it was phenomenal. I also was in She-Wolf, which was adapted by Dawn Stern and Stefan Volfair. Very, very talented, crazy cool people. Kind of just giving love to the people who brought me here. Then I found Kempe's in an email, and I've been working with them ever since. I literally was in a hotel room. There had been a COVID exposure to my family, so when I arrived back in the United States, I didn't go back to my house. I like booked a hotel room, and I was just like scrolling on the internet in my hotel room. I could say crying again just for the rule of threes. And I'm crying, I'm looking at my email, and just like Captist Auditions was like, original practice Shakespeare. And I was like, yeah. And I've been working with them ever since.
Excellent. I saw you, the first time I saw you, I think, was at Sand Lake Center for the Arts, where you just were this weekend. Was there a comedy of errors?
Yeah, I was Angelo the Merchant.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember the audience interaction.
Yeah.
And what year, how long ago was that?
That was probably 2021?
Was it?
2022?
It was 2022.
2022.
Wow.
Yeah.
And your performance in the Confetti Fest one act.
Yeah. That was so fun.
Yeah.
Laura Darling directed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was an insane farce.
Yeah.
About about this country going under, and there was just
Is it a farce?
Followed by
The villain, I guess.
what is it? Farce followed by history is whatever it is. Yeah, tragedy. Whatever. 12th night. So tell me about it. It's being done in this dairy barn, and you have 16 actors. What was the casting process like?
I did most of the casting process. Basically, what we do is just have open auditions, so anyone can come audition, no experience necessary. You don't have to even bring a headshot or resume. We take your picture there. We have a form that says, like, what's your experience with Shakespeare, any special talents, juggling, dancing, singing, whatever. And then we just did them right in Hudson and just had a plethora of people come through, and some people that I knew personally, some people Carol knew personally, cast that was there with us last year, and we just kind of decided from there, and we picked our people from that lot. And it was just people we had a strewn. I think we printed out way too many of the monologues, because like for Midsummer it's easy. They had like 3 specific monologues versus 12th Night. I wasn't sure about, like, I don't know who to, Viola can't cover all the other women roles in the show. Like Malvolio can't cover all the male roles in the show. So I had to pick different things, picking the sides, and just testing it out. And people came in and surprised us, and we're like, wow, this is very. People we had Our Valentine is actually from Albany.
Who's that?
His name's Sidesh Patel. I don't know. He's he's brand new to theater.
Oh.
Brand new. But he.
You know who I saw at Midsummer? I don't know I think he was running sound. Shane.
Oh,
Oh yeah,
nice.
Shane was he
Yeah.
was the assistant director and stage manager last year.
He's the director of Pericles.
He's told me he was doing Pericles, and I wasn't sure where. Oh yes, Shane.
Yeah,
Shane, if you're listening, I miss you. Come back.
Shane's wonderful.
Yeah, Shane he was great last year with us. And I'm hoping in the years future, I think he wanted to do last year. He was like, I want to do Merry Wives of Windsor. I was like, there's a part of me that wants, like, I'm already thinking about what to do next year. And I don't want to do all the hits first, I don't want to get them all out of the way. Then it's like, oh, well, we have to do all the histories now. Like we did all the good. You have to do the histories. Like, so I want to start, since we just did Midsummer, now we're doing 12th Night. It's like, all right, we can do another comedy, or we can start going into the plays that are like, all right, like, I love Timon of Athens.
So does Shane. Yeah, this is amazing.
I was like, even though not many people would do it, like, or understand what's going on, like, I love Timon of Athens. I think the show is very timely for what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we can do, there's that option. There's part of me, I love Labor's Lost. I would love to do that show. Just do some, like, Carol would love to do R&J. I also would love to do R&J, but, like, do we want to do all the good ones right out the... So who knows? We could possibly do R&J next year, but...
I'll say
Yes.
they're all good ones.
All great ones.
I'll fight you on that. No.
All right, we'll meet you outside in 24 minutes.
Yeah.
I think you missed one thing in our casting process, which was, and I'm sure this happens everywhere, but I think it would behoove us to labor about it, which is we feel that a pluralistic cast of various experience levels creates a better production, right? Like where the seasoned people learn so much from the new people. And so we have been very intentional about how do we reduce and change people who have been excluded from this for so long by bringing them into the process. And I think one thing that the Midsummer production did so well was like, we don't know what we're doing. We'll just take anybody. Right? Not that you weren't excellent. In fact, I would not be here if you were not excellent. But I think we sort of started like within Hudson, like an understanding that these people will work with anyone regardless of their experience level. And so I think we've been able to bring a lot of really young and fresh and people who are like off the street, saw a flyer and like, I don't know anything about this. And sort of cultivate them in an honest way into, doing this work. And I think that needs to continue to be part of the process.
Thanks, Frank.
That's why you're here.
No, that's great. So you had a great turnout for auditions, right?
Yeah.
And Midsummer was a success. People wanted to work with you now. There were people who worked with you. So now you're having an audition, and you have people of different levels of experience. Someone who may not be, who doesn't have the stage experience. How do you cast them over someone who has the experience? And are you looking like which role, or how do you choose?
Yeah, I think for me, especially being new to casting, I wouldn't say it's my forte, but definitely what I see is once you get kind of once you really start to see your main people, like for me, it's like, oh, well, once we find like kind of an Olivia, you kind of build the picture, you start creating the picture. I mean, anyone can play any of the roles, but then you start finding these certain core people that you're like, all right, now we're starting, not saying that we could have casted this show 10 different ways. But once the pieces start falling, those puzzle pieces kind of fit together. And then we start going with, like, are you directable? Like, it's wonderful you came in audition, but if you can take, like, a couple notes of me just, like, trying to alter you to see if I can get you to do something, like, that's like, okay, cool. Oh, would you work well with this person? How are you in the room? Blah, blah, blah. Like, all those types of things for me is, I think, and you guys can share on this too, I think for me, that's how I think of the casting process. And it's like I'm about to do in April, I'm going to be directing Shrek the Musical over at New Paltz. And so for me, once I find my Shrek, my Donkey, my Fiona, then you start building the world around that. and I could be completely wrong, but this is my observation
No.
of being a casting person, because I don't have any experience of casting like in the real
What
world.
works for you?
And I think for us, it worked really well that once we found I had an idea of who I wanted Olivia to be, and then it shapes over time with certain people. We're like, oh, well, this Toby's really, okay, Olivia's this, now Toby's here. Who's going to work well with Toby and Sir Andrew have to come together in that way. Orsino, once you get Orsino, then it's like, all right, you can start building his household. It's probably, but that's, I think, one of the big things that I noticed casting.
There were many times where I was like, well, what about this person? And both Zach and Carol were like, what's wrong with you? Like, that would never work. But I do think also, we recognize, obviously, representation matters, specifically within the Hudson community. And so my approach and sort of the thought process that I have tried to share was, we have to hold the truth of people do not have the same experience level, access to training, access to intensives. Some people, and we also want the best person for the job. So how do we hold both of these things? Get someone who is new, that we can devote enough time and attention that they will do a good job and have a good time and want to come back. Yeah. I think that is sort of the metric we're trying to find, right? How do we bring someone who's new in that we can give enough energy to that they're going to want to come back and do this? And so maybe that's the threshold to your question. And also don't listen to me, because as I said, a lot of really bad ideas. Apparently.
Awesome.
Well, I would say in addition, our audition process is also highly collaborative in terms of having an open audition in which the auditioners are performing for the entire group of everybody auditioning. It's not a closed room process, which means that another dynamic we're looking at is, how do you interact with your peers? How do you handle the fact that you are being witnessed by other people who are looking for the same parts as you, but also are enjoying what you're doing and supporting you, and realizing that this is actually a proof of concept, a very small synecdoche, if you will, of what we're looking for in the interactivity of the performance of the Shakespeare plays. It seems like you want to say something.
I was like, no. I also just wanted to kind of, it's making me think about, thank you, how Shakespeare and the suspension of disbelief for Shakespeare that I find to be unlike more modern shows, more contemporary shows, gender. I can play a man in Shakespeare with less questioning from my audience. And there's different layers to that. There's different ways that I can choose or not choose to dress myself. But when I played Angelo, I didn't necessarily play Angelo as a woman. I had played Angelo as a man, but I also didn't necessarily do any type of prosthetics or facial hair or deepening of my voice. And I did not feel like the audience saw me as a woman and a female within this story. And there's something that I find enjoyable about that generally I advocate for conscious casting, for race-conscious casting, gender-conscious casting. There's something that I love deeply about Shakespeare's ability to suspend disbelief for gender. When a woman plays Hamlet, that's Hamlet. That's not necessarily a woman playing Hamlet unless you want to change the pronouns within that text, unless you want to present that play. And it's just something I think a lot about with the casting process of Shakespeare is there's just more freedom for a man to play a woman or a woman to play a man, for non-binary and trans people to be involved at a higher degree without as much oppression in the casting room is something I find beautiful about that art form. There just seems to be more freedom there for gender nonconforming folks.
Great. Pericles, not one of the more familiar Shakespeare texts. What happens in Pericles?
What happened? What doesn't happen in Pericles, Prince of Tyre? I mean, essentially, there is a young prince who solves the riddle of a very powerful man, Antiochus, the king of Antioch, surrounding his daughter, who is played by Ash, who actually also plays the other daughter, Marina. And that riddle involves a relationship between father and daughter that is not only illegal, but incredibly unethical and very problematic. Pericles solves that riddle and then is essentially run out of town. In this play alone, there are 3 shipwrecks. Pericles is tossed here, tossed there. It is an entire travel documentary of the Mediterranean. We go to Mytilene, which is actually the Isle of Lesbos. We go to Turkey. We're in a number of different locales. all seeking the reunification of Pericles to his daughter after his wife supposedly dies at sea.
Excellent.
There are pirates. And I play Gower, who is the extant narrator, who is modeled after a poet who wrote the Confessio Amantis in Latin before Shakespeare's time, named John Gower. And essentially, it's also important to note, Pericles was actually a collaboration between George Wilkins and William Shakespeare. So there's actually not just Shakespeare writing this play, but two authors. And I would say in the script, there's an arguable shift towards the fourth act, and if you come see the show or you read the text, you'll experience it, where you can see where Shakespeare maybe took over and some of his conventions become more popular in the play. I would say that Gower is also this, not a deus ex machina per se, but he is close. Almost? Yes, there's this notion where he's going to tell you what's about to happen, while he's also commenting on what just happened and helping the audience transition through their world of imagination. It's very nonlinear. Have you ever thought about doing Pericles? I feel like...
No, it's one of those texts that I just know. It's like one of those Shakespeare shows that you're just not aware. But it's similar. It sounds like kind of, because I think Timon was wrote by Shakespeare, and I forget the other author that is kind of like there's a shift in Timon of Athens. It's like, all right, you kind of just left that open. That's not really... Okay, all right, we're just not going to go there anymore. That's fine. But no, I would love if it's running at a time that I can come see it. I would love to come up and see it and support you guys, support Shane, and just experience. Because that's, for me, yes, I can read it, I can watch it online, but nothing beats of seeing a production of the show itself.
Shakespeare isn't meant to be read. It's meant to be heard and seen and performed. And likewise, I think we would love to experience what you guys have going on with 12th Night. Listening to all of us speak, our value systems around Shakespeare, around accessibility, collaborative effort, we're very aligned. I think we have to continue to stay in touch, and there might be future collaboration. We would love to come down to Hudson and play with you guys, and come on.
Well, my job here is done.
Yeah. and to be fair, our model is about traveling. So we have a bus, which we've nicknamed Robin Goodfellow.
After your first show.
That's right. Yes. Who goes, as far south as Hudson. We have performed at the little gazebo on the river there back in 2017. We've gone as far north as the Southern Adirondacks in Northville and the Sacandaga Lake region. We've gone west to Amsterdam and basically everywhere in between. So we would definitely come down.
That's definitely something, especially in years. We are also, with approval, we're probably going to start producing at least 2 shows a year. So we're thinking about doing a staged reading by a local playwright named John Paul Porter, who is in the area. So that would happen right after we close, while the stage is still up before the cows come home. They would just do a staged reading of his show there, and then if all goes well with that, we would still hold our free Shakespeare every year, and then try to do what I like to say is satellite productions. There's the Park Theater in Hudson, which does live music. They also do stage readings, but they're actually getting funding to open up and put a real theater in the back, I believe. I haven't seen the...
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, there's also the Hudson Opera House, which I know does more music and stuff, but you just walk in there and I'm just I need to do a show in the round here right now. And so hopefully one day that can happen, where we just do these productions, or if it's you guys could rehearse up in Albany, and then you have a week load in of here's the space, have fun, Columbia County, and we could just have a collaborative experience, which I think would be really nice.
Very into it, yeah.
Yeah. So we got the plot from Pericles. I think for all the Shakespeare skeptics out there, we might need the plot. Shakespeare Curious. We have to keep up. We have to get the plot for 12th Night. What happens in 12th Night?
So 12th Night, there is also a shipwreck. Only one, though. Well, technically, there's 2. There's 2 shipwrecks.
Are there pirates?
Actually, yeah, you could say Antonio is a pirate. So there is the Duke of Illyria, who's Orsino, and there's the Countess Olivia, the 2, I would say, royal families of Illyria. In Olivia's household, there is Malvolio, who is the uptight steward. Maria, who is her serving woman. You have Fabian, who we have dubbed Phoebe and Anne in our production.
Phoebe and Anne,
now
it's Phoebe and Anne. We lost a person.
Yeah. Her Uncle Sir Toby Belch and Sir Andrew Agutique, who Toby tells to come woo Olivia And then in Orsino's house is Valentine and Curio, who are the serving folks of Orsino. And then you're thrown into action with Viola, who is shipwrecked. She's saved by a captain, who then disguises herself to work under Orsino to then work for him, wooing Olivia, because he's been doing it for who knows how long, and he's had no success, so he tries Cesario, and then Olivia, I don't want to give too much of away, but Olivia falls in love with Viola, who is originally Cesario, and then you meet her brother comes along, and then
Gave it
it's...
away.
I know, I'm already there. You don't need to come see the show. It's
Are
fun.
there spoiler alerts for a 450-year-old play? If you don't know it by now,
There's the skeptics out there.
I mean, you know it by some
Isn't
film
this,
that's adapted it. I mean, think about
She's the man.
She's the man.
the exact.
It's
Yeah.
the Capital
Definitely
Region
holds up.
premiere.
It's
It's
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I think that's
excellent.
pretty much it.
All right, so we have our Shakespeare on for August. So we've come to the time in the program for the play that changed my life. Who wants to go first? Ash, you've been selected.
I didn't nominate. I just said over there first as I saw
Yeah, all right. I thought about this question a lot.
Oh, excellent.
I think, surprisingly, I went through all the Shakespeare that I did, and I was going to talk about The Winter's Tale, but then I remembered a play I did in college, and it really did change my life. It was the first what I would consider a passion project that I was ever a part of, and it was just like the four of us who really wanted to put up this play. We read it online. We thought it was the best play ever. It was called Always Plenty of Light at the Starlight All-Night Diner by Darcy Parker Bruce. I'll tell you, it's got a time-traveling diner that goes back to the dinosaur period. It's like a queer comedy. It's very like... It was the first time that I got to play a character that had a similar queer experience to myself, and that was something that like immediately clicked with me. I was like, oh my gosh, like I want to read this, I want to do it. But it was an independent project, so it wasn't a senior project, it wasn't a project being put up by the school. So we were in this building called Southside that was essentially a room. Like, it was a carpeted room, it had like poles in it that someone, the lore is that in the late 80s, people went up into like the push ceiling and they installed a lighting trellis, like the whole grid, by attaching it to like water pipes. So it was like a crazy small room with like these electrics hanging from water pipes that we were trying to deal with. And I just remember we decided we were going to turn the whole room into a diner. It was going to be immersive. We were going to make it a diner. And so like the four of us up every night until like 4, 5, 6 a.m. I have videos of us just like taping down checkerboarded like hardboard and painting checkerboards for hours and hours in the middle of the night. And the reason it changed my life is that it was so worth it. Like, we were able to turn this room into a diner. We were able to like hook up lights that would go wild and create like a time travel scene. And we were all pretty young and had never really been on our own to create a whole show from our hearts. And so it was like picking something that the themes mattered to us and the story mattered to us, and we had so much fun. The flip side of it was so much work. My favorite little thing about it is that there was one night we were painting the hardboard like 3 a.m. and it was maybe our 10th hour just painting in this room, and the fire alarm had gone off in a building next door. We didn't know that, and we also didn't know that our building was like the location that everyone goes to when the fire alarm goes off, and we had just put all of our walls up, so we didn't see anyone come in. So it's 3 a.m., we're all like deliriously painting, and all of a sudden there's like shuffling and groaning of hundreds of people behind the wall, and like for the split, like just the smallest second, all of us kind of like snapped our heads up and weren't positive there wasn't a zombie apocalypse. Like, we were all because it was just like mass people and groaning in the middle of the night, and we were like,
Traveled somewhere.
The diner actually traveled
yeah,
through
the
time.
diner went somewhere. Yeah, but
That's
it was
awesome.
fun.
Oh, thanks, Ash.
Yeah.
That was great.
And I'm just reeling from this story. I mean, in thinking about theater as ritual and, you know, physicalization and visualization, creating belief,
Yeah.
maybe you did actually travel in time, right? Did it? If you felt like it happened, didn't it happen? A play that changed my life. I would say it actually happened within this company. I played the role of Iago in Shakespeare's Othello, which was the most challenging role I think I've ever taken on in my life. It was when I knew that I wanted to do this for real and continue down this path of deepening my relationship to this text, because in full disclosure, I am the company clown. I literally have had Pachinko clown training in West Philly. I've played Festa. I've played Touchstone. I think there's a little bit of the clowning Gower as well in this musical sense. And Iago's the first, nope, we're taking all of that away. And you are going to be a manipulative, vile, pathological creature who is, I would say arguably one of Shakespeare's most famous and most powerful antagonists. One of the reasons I believe that is because of the language. So if you're looking at the scansion of Shakespeare, which is the rhythmic breakdown of the iambic pentameter of the poetry, you look at this verse, most of them are in 10 syllables. Occasionally you have an 11th, which gives us a feminine ending, which may be posing a question or sharing some kind of uncertainty. Occasionally you'll see 12 syllables, which would indicate, that's called an Alexandrian, nobility, or another shift in the verse to mark a certain status. In Iago, I discover when he is talking to Othello about Desdemona's relationship and the fact that she has been unfaithful to him, he starts using 13-syllable lines. Never seen that in any other text of Shakespeare I've read. And it took me completely out, like, what am I doing? How do I not know this? How do I not know how to do this? And I started realizing that Iago was speaking in these triplets, and that Shakespeare was writing these elided rhythmic phrases to seed uncertainty, not for himself, not to the audience, but specifically as if casting a spell on Othello. And this relationship to exploring the text to this granular level made me, well, obviously a super nerd as I'm demonstrating right now, but that I love this so much that it matters how much power language has, and that I want to use that power for good, okay? Iago certainly doesn't, but as an audience member, right, this is a cautionary tale of who not to trust and what not to do. And I think that was the biggest transformation I've had in my career as an actor thus far doing Shakespeare.
That's awesome. Yeah, and but he may be Shakespeare's greatest antagonist, but he also gets laughs.
He's incredibly funny. You could argue in some ways he is a fool, right? He believes himself so much that he deceives himself in and of this, and he tells a lot of very acerbic jokes, often at others' expense. He is funny.
Wow, what a setup for when you called me Iago earlier.
Got him!
Ouch.
Frank.
Oh, thank God I'm not last.
I thought you were going to be.
All this Shakespeare stuff is not what I'm going to talk about. I think for me, Zach brought me to this show, and it happened to be a show that I might have been part of the executive producing of for a job that I had randomly, but had totally forgotten about until we got there. And it was called Where We Belong, which is a piece by Mohegan theater maker Madeline Sayette. And it is a one-person show. Are you familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was at the public...
It went to the public theater also.
Yeah.
They did a Hudson Valley Shakes also did it. That's where we both
Yes.
saw
But
it.
I worked for the executive production company before starting the Renaissance Fair because I've done a bunch of weird stuff. And we went, and it was just such a... At that time, in my life, what was going on was radical shifts in what I cared and thought about and how I participated in a bunch of... Am I allowed to curse? Terrible shit.
Oh, yeah.
In corporate America, whatever. And then also a deepening of my understanding of the experiences of different people and how they interact with the world. And so the story, I think the predominant story she tells is how being the daughter of the medicine woman of her community and wanting to study and get a PhD in Shakespeare, and sort of the tension between those two things in her family, and how she traveled to England, and there was sort of this parody between her ancestors traveling there to try and found and this is a couple years ago, I'm trying to remember, the first Native American college, and how that person, died in England, and sort of the sadness around that person not being able to be brought back home. And just really dealing with herself and her understanding of Shakespeare in particular, and how she doesn't see herself in it, and maybe how she can. Really just totally pulling on the heartstrings, and also a really wonderful performance. And also she blew a snot rocket in our performance, if you recall, which is nice. I know that sounds gross, but it was such a this is a real visceral thing, and she's like, "Oh my God, excuse me."
Wow.
Yeah,
I was just like, wow, what a break. And then also, I don't care, because what you're saying is so interesting, and you're delivering it with so much emotion, because it's your story. It's not just reading something off a page. And so that was really, really something.
Yeah, great. Fantastic.
Dang, I wish you did end. That was great.
It's not rocket.
Yeah, that's not rocket. That's the closer right there. For me, I've been thinking about this question since Frank said you wanted us to come up here, and I'm jostling through. Everyone spoke about Shakespeare or somebody involved with Shakespeare. Part of me we did this production of You Can't Take It With You in 8th grade. I know it's not Shakespeare. I could talk about my college stuff, but for me and I grew up not liking musicals. I hated Sound of Music. I hated Grease. I don't know if it was because I was jealous about the people that got the guy that was Kanicki. I'm sorry, I think his name was Adam. He couldn't sing in high school, and I was so upset.
And he can't sing now.
He can't sing now.
Nepo casting.
Yeah, and we did that play itself. I love farces, and just to have that type of reaction to an audience, just laughing at you, and knowing that you're helping them escape. I mean, obviously, I'm not thinking about this now, and it was then in 8th grade, but you're allowed this time and this moment in time with a bunch of people watching you to have these shared experiences in one room, whether it's laughing, crying, being contemplative about what's my purpose in this life? How am I doing things that are affecting other people in the world? For me, just that show itself, I think, said, oh, okay, I'm having fun doing this. I'm enjoying having people laugh, whether it's at me or at situations I'm involved in. I want to keep doing this in whatever form it is. I love musicals now. Most of the time, it's just Sondheim pretty much. But it's just that share, and I think Shakespeare kind of brings it back to Shakespeare, that shared communal experience. That when I'm directing Viola in a scene and telling her and Sebastian at that big reveal moment, which is the whole show is a comedy, but that moment is such a pure, beautiful moment of two people connecting again. And when she can make me cry, I've done my job. I don't need, and shout out to Ashley Hill, who's our Viola. She is incredible. Comes from a dancer. She's a dancer background. And
First timer.
Right. And there was a way in the room, and it kind of goes back to casting. She was kind of standing there like all people do, I'm just reading it. And I'm like, Ashley, what do you do? She's like, oh, I'm a dancer. I'm like, all right, so let's get you moving. So I just had her cross through the room, and it's the ring scene where she's like, I left no ring with her. So I was like, all right, come in. Malvolio just gave you the ring. Don't think anything of it. Leave. Stop halfway through. Have the thought. Come back. Start the monologue. That's it. And we knew right then and there. I was like, yep, that's our Viola.
Awesome.
So that's You Can't Take It With You that's my play that changed my life.
That's great. It sounds like a time traveling diner.
Yeah.
No, that's a powerful, powerful thing. Is getting a room to laugh with you and at you. Yeah. Give me the details one more time. We have to get out of here. 12th night by Columbia County Players. Where and when? That's
going to be at the Churchtown Dairy in Hudson, New York, August 22nd through the 25th. I know it says online it is pretty much sold out. But please reach out to either me at zach@columbiacountyplayers.com. That's ZACH. Or info@columbiacountyplayers. We can see what we can do with reserving you a ticket. Please don't let
Excellent.
If we still have some.
Yeah.
But that's I think where you can reach us, and any questions, casting, please just reach out to us, and
Truly.
We'll let you keep you on the mailing list.
Worth the trip. It was an incredible experience. Quite the adventure. And Will Kemp's Players playing through the month of August.
That's right. So our next set of gigs is this coming weekend. We have Midsummer Madness, a gamified version of A Midsummer Night's Dream, and Pericles Prince of Tyre, one right after the other, at Indian Ladder Farms Cidery and Brewery in Altamont, New York. Yeah, they have a pizza garden.
Oh, pizza garden.
They brew their own cider.
Can
and
I
their
pick my
beer.
own ingredients for said pizza in the garden? Or
wouldn't that be fun? Ask them about it. They'd probably say yes. And there's a gorgeous view of the Helderberg Escarpment behind you. Lovely outdoor Shakespeare. After that, I believe we are at WAMC.
Belinda for for Midsummer.
Yes, and we'll be in Shepherd Park in Lake George with Pericles, and then we'll also be in Jennings Landing in Albany, which is an outdoor amphitheater right on the Hudson River, with the shows the weekend after, and finally closing Midsummer Madness at the Round Lake Auditorium in Round Lake, New York on the 31st.
Excellent. And Harbinger Theater is opening the United States premiere of Maggie May by Francis Poet. Collaboration with Albany Civic Theater, September 6th through the 22nd. And don't forget the cast party to benefit the Capital Region Festival of Theater, October 27th at Cahoe's Music Hall. It's welcoming the entire community to come together, and we're building a theater festival, which is going to be for a weekend in June of 2025. Until then, this is Patrick White, and I'll see you in a theater soon. Thank you.